The roles of a sports psychologist. My name is Manpreet Sidhu, and today I'll be talking you through the different roles of sports psychologists. Consultancy. Consultancy is where a sports psychologist comes in and provides expert advice for a fee. They help athletes to develop their psychological skills in order for them to be able to improve their performance when it comes to gameplay. Many sports clubs and teams are not able to keep a full-time sports psychologist as it is very expensive. Therefore, they hire them when they need them. However, sometimes clubs and universities can keep these consultants for a full-time basis. They can also come in and do workshops for both the athletes and the coaches. An example of how consultancy can help improve performance. Louise is a sports psychologist and she worked with a show jumper to overcome the mental barriers that she was facing. A show jumper approached Louise wanting to jump the 1.2 height class for the first time. She had never achieved this, and inner belief patterns relating to self-confidence had caused a performance block. This uncertainty was also transferring into her horse's behaviour. Within a month of having face-to-face consultancy with Louise, the show jumper broke a personal barrier and jumped the 1.2 height class for the first time. The performer overcame a personal boundary she had subconsciously set through beliefs and unproductive thinking. With a combination of dedication to technical, physical and mind training, the show jumper has now reached the national finals and is ready to compete at the 1.3 metre class. This just shows how consultancy can improve performance and can overcome mental barriers that some athletes may face. So consultants can be used to come in to help with team building or getting an athlete or team ready for a big competition that may be coming up. Lifestyle management. Sports psychologists also have the role of lifestyle management. This is where they talk with the athletes and control their job, which is them competing in elite sport, as well as their personal life, which includes how much they sleep, their diet, as well as having time to themselves. The sports psychologist helps the athlete to manage the busy lifestyle that they have so that they do not become too stressed and start losing who they are because they are so caught up in jumping from doing one thing to another in small amounts of time. With the help of a sports psychologist, the athlete can have control over the busy life they lead, which means they can have time to themselves where they are not busy with training and competitions, so when it does come to this time, when they need to compete, the lifestyle management plan that the sports psychologist has given them will now help them in supporting performance because they have had a good lifestyle which is balanced. Sometimes the tiniest of things, like not having enough sleep, could hinder performance because the athlete hasn't controlled their lifestyle. Therefore, when coming to performing, they're not the best that they should be. So how is this done and who do they work with? Well, lifestyle management is done through a sports psychologist working with the participant and working out a management plan for the participant to follow in order for them to keep a balance with the busy life they lead, as well as being able to have time to relax. The sports psychologist will work with those athletes who are struggling to keep the right balance and who are struggling with aspects of their life and need help and advice. These athletes can be elite from college teams or universities. Performance enhancement. This is where the psychologist helps the athlete to be the best at what they do by looking at the psychological state that the athlete is in and the skills that they have. The sports psychologist will help the athlete go through the psychological barriers that they may have in their mind, which is stopping them from progressing further in their sport, and this can be done through different techniques depending on which works best for the athlete. They can also help with the athlete's performance by helping them overcome any confidence issues that they are facing that are hindering performance. This can be done with an in-house consultant or an external consultant. Team building. Psychologists will work closely with the team to overcome any problems that they are facing, as well as build up better relationships in order for them to be ready when it comes to competition. There are two programs that the psychologist can offer, and these are early intervention programs, and the second being a reactive intervention program, which both focus on different things but have the same goal: to build up team cohesiveness. So the early intervention program, this is when the psychologist will try to ensure that the individuals within the team understand their different roles. Levels of cohesion will also begin to develop in this stage, as well as improving communications between players and coaches. The reactive intervention program, this is when the psychologist focuses more on solving conflict within the team and overcoming breakdowns of communication within the team or within the players and the coaches. So an example of this could be two players having a conflict over something that has happened in a game due to constant arguing during training. The coach would notice this, and a sports psychologist would then be brought in and talk to these individuals and the team to try and resolve their issues using the reactive intervention program, which would hopefully help to overcome the problem that they're facing. Education. Sports psychologists also have the role of educating teams or athletes about psychology of sport and how mental barriers may be something that is stopping them from performing to their best, as well as trying to overcome the thought that sports psychologists are used for the weak players, as this is what the stereotype was, but nowadays everybody uses sports psychologists. So sports psychologists are brought in to educate coaches, managers, teams and individual athletes on how psychology can affect sporting performance. So how do they do this? This can be done through workshops, teaching psychology courses, and writing educational books. An example of this is the Weinberg and Gold psychology book. This can also be done through social media like YouTube and Twitter. By coaches and managers being educated on how sports psychology can affect sports performance, it means that they can help the athletes and understand that things that they might be thinking is affecting the way that they perform. They can also understand things about how teams need cohesion and the ways that they can improve this. So an example of this could be a sports psychologist giving a lecture to football coaches about how sports psychology could be affecting the sporting performance of the team. They could be focusing on one specific aspect, which might be teaching the coaches about social and task cohesion. Research. Another role of the sports psychologist is research. So they research into why certain things happen and they use the research cycle to do this. And they are often based in universities. So what is the research cycle? The research cycle begins with identifying the problem for the investigation. They then carry out the research, and then they evaluate their findings, and then the cycle goes again. During evaluating the findings, they can share their findings with fellow psychologists who also share their thoughts about the piece of research that has been conducted. From this, more research is being undertaken because they are all sharing the results that they have found. So this will result in more answers and more questions to be asked about why something may be affecting something else. So when they evaluate their findings, it leads to more questions. This then comes back to identifying the problem for the investigation, and the cycle continues. Injury rehabilitation. Another role of the sports psychologist is injury rehabilitation. So they work with athletes to overcome injuries that they have encountered and help them to overcome any of those fears that they have of returning to the sport. The psychologist will help the athletes stick to the rehabilitation program that they are working on. So how do they do this? Well, they'll help control the athlete's feelings that have arisen due to the injury that has occurred, which may be feelings of anger, depression, sadness, and even frustration. They will do this by using the different techniques, one being imagery. They will also work with the athlete to work on particular goals as part of their recovery. Some athletes may have mental scars about the incident that has happened causing their injury, and this is something that the psychologist will work with them to overcome and get back into the sport without having the fear that this injury could occur again.
This is Ellen. Ellen is out of horse riding training as she has injured her leg. By injuring her leg, it means that she cannot compete in specific competitions and she cannot go to her training sessions that she would normally go to. Let's ask Ellen how she feels.
Let's ask Ellen how she feels.
I can't participate in my activities that I find fun and enjoyable, and I'm also missing my friends. This is an example of where a sports psychologist would come in to talk about injury rehabilitation and would help Ellen in her recovery.
So in this video we just saw Ellen, who is a horse rider. We saw that she's been injured. So when the sports psychologist comes in, he or she will help Ellen to overcome the fears that she might be feeling or any mental scars that she might still have in her head.